My Uncle Juan told me to always have a backup plan. I couldn't be certain the scepter would even be on display.
Ah. You requested arbiter intervention in your execution, as most prisoners do. I decided on a whim to agree to your request because I was curious why you had created this painting. But child, you can't honestly believe we'd let you free. With sins like this, you are in a monumentally bad predicament, and our mercy can only be extended so far.
She glanced toward the other arbiters. The ones seated near the fireplace seemed to be paying no heed, but they did not speak to one another. They were listening.
Something is wrong. They're worried.
An opportunity.
It is time to take control of this conversation. You want something from me? I'm ready to discuss my payment.
Your payment? Girl, you are to be executed on the morrow. If we did wish something of you, the payment would be your life.
My life is my own, and it has been for days now.
Please, you were locked in the forger's cell with 30 different kinds of stone in the wall.
44 kinds, actually.
Gaotona raised an appreciative eyebrow.
You thought I wouldn't recognize the grindstone, didn't you? Please, I'm a forger. I learned stone classification during my first year of training. That block was obviously from the Lio quarry.
Frava opened her mouth to speak, a slight smile to her lips.
Yes, I know about the plates of Raucalist, the unforgeable metal, hidden behind the rock wall of my cell. The wall was a puzzle, meant to distract me. You wouldn't actually make a cell out of rocks like limestone, just in case a prisoner gave up on forgery and tried to chip their way free. You built the wall, but secured it with a plate of Raucalist at the back to cut off escape. The problem with Raucalist is that it's not a very strong metal. Oh, the grate at the top of my cell was solid enough, and I couldn't have gotten through that. But a thin plate? Really? Have you heard of anthracite?
Frava snapped her mouth shut and frowned.
It is a rock that burns.
You gave me a candle.
Shai reached into the small of her back. She tossed her makeshift wooden soul stamp onto the desk.
All I had to do was forge the wall and persuade the stones that they're anthracite. Not a difficult task. Once I knew the 44 types of rock, I could burn them, and they'd melt that plate behind the wall.
Shai pulled over a chair, seating herself before the desk. She leaned back. Frava drew her lips to a line and said nothing. Shai let her muscles relax, and she breathed a quiet prayer to the unknown god.
Knights! They actually bought it!
She'd worried they'd know enough of forgery to see through her lie.
I was going to escape tonight, but whatever it is you want me to do must be important, as you're willing to involve a miscreant like myself. And so we come to my payment.
I could still have you executed. Right now. Here.
But you won't, will you?
I warned you that she would be difficult to manipulate.
Shai could tell she'd impressed him, but at the same time his eyes seemed...
sorrowful? Is that the right emotion?
She found this aged man as difficult to read as a book in Svordish. Frava raised a finger, then swiped it to the side. A servant approached with a small cloth-wrapped box. Shai's heart leaped upon seeing it. The man opened the latches on the front and raised the top. The case was lined with soft cloth and inset with 5 depressions made to hold soul stamps. Each cylindrical stone stamp was as long as a finger and as wide as a large man's thumb. The leather-bound notebook set in the case atop them was worn by long use. Shai breathed in a hint of its familiar scent. They were called essence marks, the most powerful kind of soul stamp. Each essence mark had to be attuned to a specific individual and was intended to rewrite their history, personality, and soul for a short time. These 5 were attuned to Shai.
5 stamps to rewrite a soul. Each is an abomination, illegal to possess. These essence marks were to be destroyed this afternoon. Even if you had escaped, you'd have lost these. How long does it take to create one?
Years.
There were no other copies. Notes and diagrams were too dangerous to leave, even in secret, as such things gave others too much insight to one's soul. She'd never let these essence marks out of her sight, except on the rare occasion they were taken from her.
You will accept these as payment?
Yes.
Then let me show you what you are to do.
Shai had never met an emperor before, let alone poked one in the face. Emperor Ashravan of the 80 Suns, 49th ruler of the Rose Empire, did not respond as Shai prodded him. He stared blankly, his round cheeks rosy and hale, but his expression completely lifeless.
What happened?
Shai straightened from beside the Emperor's bed. It was in the style of the ancient Lamio people, with a headboard shaped like a phoenix rising toward heaven. She'd seen a sketch of such a headboard in a book. Likely, the forgery had been drawn from that source.
Assassins.
Gaotona stood on the other side of the bed, alongside two surgeons. Of the strikers, only their captain, Zhu, had been allowed to enter.
The murderers broke in 2 nights ago, attacking the Emperor and his wife. She was slain. The Emperor received a crossbow bolt to the head.
That considered, he's looking remarkable.
You are familiar with resealing?
Vaguely.
Her people called it flesh forgery. Using it, a surgeon of great skill could forge a body to remove its wounds and scars. It required great specialization. The forger had to know each and every sinew, each vein and muscle in order to accurately heal. Resealing was one of the few branches of forgery that Shai hadn't studied in depth. Get an ordinary forgery wrong and you created a work of poor artistic merit.
Get a flesh forgery wrong and people die.
Frava walked around the foot of the bed, hands behind her back.
Our resealers are the best in the world. The Emperor was attended to quickly following the assassination attempt. The wound to his head was healed, but...
But his mind was not? It doesn't sound like they did a very good job at all.
The surgeon who had cleared his throat was a diminutive man and had ears like window shutters that had been thrown open wide on a sunny day.
Resealing repairs a body and makes it anew. That, however, is much like rebinding a book with fresh paper following a fire. Yes, it may look exactly the same, and it may be whole all the way through. The words are gone. We have given the Emperor a new brain. It is merely empty.
Huh. Did you find out who tried to kill him?
The 5 arbiters exchanged glances.
Yes, they know.
We are not certain.
Meaning you know, but you couldn't prove it well enough to make an accusation. One of the other factions in court, then?
The Glory faction.
That makes sense. If the Emperor dies, there's a good chance that the Glory faction will win a bid to elevate his successor.
At 40, Emperor Ashravan was young still by grand standards. He had been expected to rule another 50 years.
If he's replaced, these 5 arbiters will lose their positions.
That, by imperial politics, would be a huge blow to their status. They'd drop from being the most powerful people in the world to being among the lowest of the Empire's 80 factions.
The assassins did not survive their attack. The Glory faction does not yet know whether their ploy succeeded. You are going to replace the Emperor's soul with a forgery.
They're crazy! Forging one's own soul is difficult enough, and you don't have to rebuild it from the ground up. These arbiters have no idea what they're asking. But of course they don't. They hate forgery, or so they claim. They walk on imitation floor tiles past copies of ancient vases. They let their surgeons repair a body, but they don't call any of these things forgery in their own tongue. It's what they consider an abomination, which means I'm really their only choice. No one in their own government is capable of this. I'm probably not either.
Can you do it?
I have no idea. Yes.
It will need to be an exact forgery. the Glory faction has any inkling of what we've done, they will pounce. The Emperor must not act erratically.
I said I could do it. But it will be difficult. I will need information about Ashravan and his life. Everything we can get. Official histories will be a start, but they'll be too sterile. I will need extensive interviews and writings about him from those who knew him best. Servants, friends, family members. Did he have a journal?
Yes.
Excellent.
Those documents are sealed. He wanted them destroyed.
Everyone in the room looked toward the man. He swallowed, then looked down.
You shall have everything you request.
I'll need a test subject as well. Someone to test my forgeries on. A grand, male, someone who was around the Emperor a lot and who knew him. That will let me see if I have the personality right. Knights! Getting the personality right is secondary. Getting a stamp that actually takes, that will be the first step.
She wasn't certain she could manage even that much.
And I'll need soul stone, of course.
Frava regarded Shai, arms folded.
You can't possibly expect me to do this without soulstone. I could carve a stamp out of wood if I had to, but your goal will be difficult enough as it is. Soulstone, lots of it.
Fine. But you will be watched these 3 months. Closely.
3 months? I'm planning for this to take at least 2 years.
You have 100 days. Actually 98 now.
Impossible.
The official explanation for why the Emperor hasn't been seen these last 2 days is that he's been in mourning for the death of his wife. The Glory faction will assume we are scrambling to buy time following the Emperor's death. Once the 100 days of isolation are finished, they will demand that Ashravan present himself to the court. If he does not, we are finished, as will be...
I will need gold for this. Take what you're thinking I'll demand and double it. I will walk out of this country rich.
Done.
That was too easy. Oh, delightful. They're planning to kill me once this is over. Well, that gives me 98 days to find a way out. Get me those records. I'll need a place to work, plenty of supplies, and my things back.
She held up a finger before they could complain.
Not my essence marks, but everything else. I'm not going to work for 3 months in the same clothing I've been wearing while in prison. And, as I consider it, have someone draw me a bath immediately.
The next day, Shai was bathed, well-fed, and well-rested for the first time since her capture. They'd given her a room. It was tiny, probably the most drab in the entire palace, and it smelled faintly of mildew. They had still posted guards to watch her all night, of course, and, from her memory of the layout of the vast palace, she was in one of the least frequented wings, one used mostly for storage. Still, it was better than a cell. Barely. Shai looked up from her inspection of the room's old cedar table. It probably hadn't seen an oiling cloth in longer than Shai had been alive. One of her guards led in Gaotona and Captain Zhu. The Arbiter carried a box 2 handspans wide and a couple of inches deep. Shai rushed over, drawing a glare from Captain Zhu.
Keep your distance from His Grace.
Or what? You'll stab me?
Someday I will enjoy.
Yes.
She took the box and walked back to her table. She flipped open the box's lid. Inside were 18 soul stamps, their heads smooth and unetched.